When I was 8 months pregnant, my father-in-law stood up at dinner and said, "I will be in the room when she gives birth." My father-in-law Vernon has always believed everything in this family belongs to him. The moment I got pregnant, he started calling the baby his bloodline, his boy, his name to carry forward, and by the time I was 8 months along, he had announced to the whole family dinner table that he would be in the delivery room whether I wanted him there or not. He did not ask, he told. Half the table clapped and called it sweet. I said no right then, in front of all of them. I told Vernon that the only people in that room would be me and my husband Travis. Vernon waved his hand the way he always does when I say something he has decided not to hear, and told me I would be too busy pushing to notice he was there. He said his own father stood in the room for every one of his kids, and that was just how things worked in their family. I found out later that was not even true. After that dinner, he brought it up every time he saw me. He told his sisters, his neighbors, his church friends. Everyone kept congratulating him like he was the one having the baby. When I told him again that he was not coming, he turned to Travis and said, "A real man's father stands for the birth of his line," and that Travis was weak for letting his wife make the decision. Travis told him to stop. Vernon did not stop. He called my doctor's office and pretended to be helping with our paperwork, so he could ask what the rules were about family in the delivery room. The office called me to verify because something felt off to them. That is the kind of man Vernon is. He even pulled Travis aside once and suggested Travis could just let him slip into the room once I was already pushing, like I would not notice a grown man walking in while I was in labor. Travis said no, and Vernon called him a disappointment. He bought a little jacket with the name he had already chosen for my son stitched across the back before the baby was even born, and he told anyone who would listen that he would be the first one to hold the child. Not me, him. I had not agreed to any of it. The day I went into labor, Vernon was at the hospital before we had even called anyone. One of the cousins tipped him off the second my water broke. By the time Travis and I got checked in, Vernon was already standing at the front desk of the maternity floor telling the nurse he was the grandfather and needed to be taken back. She told him only people on my approved list could enter. I had given them one name, Travis. Vernon started arguing right there in the middle of the ward while other women were trying to labor in peace. The nurse told him to go to the lobby. He went to my door instead. He tried the handle while I was in active labor. A nurse stepped between him and the room and told him to back off. He sent his sister Nina up to stand outside my door and tell Travis he was breaking his father's heart. My blood pressure started climbing and the nurses knew exactly why. The charge nurse finally told Vernon he was disturbing patients and had to leave the floor. He argued with her too. He said he had every right to be there. She told him he had no right to be anywhere near my room and called security. Two men walked Vernon off the maternity floor and down to the lobby while he was still talking about his bloodline and his family name. He sat in that lobby with strangers for the entire birth. He did not see anything. He did not hear anything. The first person to hold my son was me. The second was Travis. Then my mother Lynn, who I actually wanted there, came up and held him. Vernon was still sitting downstairs the whole time and nobody went to get him. By the time Travis and I brought our son Miguel home 2 days later, Vernon had already built his version of events and spread it to everyone he knew. But there was something Vernon did not know. The charge nurse had documented every single thing he did on that maternity floor, and I had copies of those records. I was done being polite about this. I was done hoping he would come around. Vernon wanted a fight over my son, and he picked the wrong person to fight. We had not even been home an hour when it started. Travis's phone lit up with 17 missed calls from Vernon and a family group text chain already over 40 messages deep. Words like cruel and vindictive kept showing up from people I had met twice in my life. Travis's sister Nina sent a separate long text. The part that stayed with me was where she wrote that their father had cried the entire drive home and had never been so humiliated in his life. I was standing in my own living room 2 days out from giving birth, holding my newborn son, and I was supposed to manage the feelings of a man who had just tried to break into my hospital room. Vernon never called me directly. He called Travis on rotation, every few hours. First a cold short call, just "I hope you are happy with yourself," and then he hung up before Travis could respond. Then a quiet sad voice, "I just wanted to see my grandson born. Travis, that is all I wanted." Then anger, "You let her do this. You let her cut me out of my own family." Every call was designed to make Travis feel like the guilty one, and I could see it working. By day 3, Travis was worn down in a way I could see in every part of him. He walked from room to room like he was carrying something he could not put down. The family messages had not stopped. Every few hours, another aunt or uncle or cousin sent something about how Vernon was hurting and how we needed to make it right. After we finally got Miguel to sleep that night, Travis sat on the edge of the bed and said maybe we should just let Vernon come see the baby. One visit, supervised, just so things could calm down. Every part of me said no. Vernon had not apologized for a single thing, but I looked at Travis and I could see what this was doing to him. He was still someone's son, and the weight of cutting that off was sitting on him like a stone. So against every instinct I had, I said okay, one visit, at our house, with rules. Travis called and Vernon picked up on the first ring. When Travis told him he could come the following afternoon, Vernon said finally, like he had been owed this the whole time, and we were just late on delivery. After Travis hung up, I sat down at the prep counter and wrote out the rules on a piece of paper. No holding Miguel without asking. No taking him to another room. No calling him by any name other than Miguel. No staying longer than 1 hour. If Vernon raised his voice even once, the visit was over. I taped the list to the inside of the front door so it would be the first thing he saw when he walked in. My mother Lynn read it and said she did not think a piece of paper was going to stop that man. I told her it was not for him. It was for the record. When Vernon broke the rules, and I knew he would, I wanted proof he had been told. Vernon showed up 20 minutes early. I was warming a bottle when I heard the knock at 11:40 and felt my jaw go tight. 20 minutes early is not excitement. It is a boundary test, and he had not even made it through the door yet. Travis let him in, and Vernon walked straight past me without a word, eyes going directly across the room to the bassinet. I stepped between him and Miguel and told him we had rules for this visit. He waved his hand and said he heard. He was just there to see his grandson. I made him sit down before he got any closer. For the first 20 minutes, Vernon did everything right, and honestly that scared me more than if he had come in yelling. He sat where I pointed. He asked before he reached for the baby. He cradled Miguel gently, held his head the right way, and spoke to him in a soft, quiet voice I had never heard from Vernon before. Lynn was standing in the doorway from the prep area with her arms crossed, watching. She was not smiling. She was not relaxing. saying, "She was watching Vernon the way you watch a dog that has bitten someone before, and she was not pretending otherwise." But I started to wonder for just a second if I had been too hard on him, if all Vernon really wanted was to hold his grandson and feel included. The room felt calmer than it had in weeks. Then Vernon leaned his face close to the baby and said, "You look just like your grandpa. You have the Vance chin." Normal grandparent talk. Then, in that same soft voice, without looking up, he said, "We are going to call you Little V, because you were supposed to carry my name." Everything in my body locked up at once. I said his name is Miguel. Vernon did not look at me. He kept his eyes on the baby like I had not spoken, and said he knew what we named him. He was just saying what he would have called him. Then he reached into the gift bag he had brought and pulled out a small blue blanket. There was a name embroidered on it in gold thread. It said Vernon Jr. He held it up in front of all of us like he was proud of something he had worked hard on. I stood up. I said, "That is not his name." Vernon looked at me with the expression he uses when he thinks I am being unreasonable and said it was a gift. Was I going to make a scene over a blanket? I told him having a blanket made with a name that is not his name is not a gift. It is a statement. He did not answer me. He turned his whole body toward Travis and said, "Are you going to let her talk to me like this in my grandson's house?" That was the move. Go around me, straight to Travis, make me the problem. But Travis stood up and looked at his father and said, "Dad, it is our house, and she is right. His name is Miguel." Vernon's face changed completely. The careful grandfather who had been sitting on my couch for 20 minutes asking permission and speaking softly disappeared. He stood up from the couch still holding Miguel, looked at both of us with cold, flat eyes, and said, "You are all going to regret shutting me out. I am this boy's grandfather, and I have rights." I stepped toward him and said, "Give me my son." Vernon did not move. He stood in my living room holding my baby for 3 full seconds, looking right at me, not handing him over. The message was in his eyes. I am holding what matters to you, and I am choosing when to give it back. Then, slowly, like he was doing me a favor, he passed Miguel to me. I pulled my son against my chest and stepped back. Travis looked at his father and told him he needed to leave. Vernon picked up the blanket with the wrong name on it, folded it neatly, set it on the couch, said the blanket stays, it belongs to him, and walked out without another word. He did not look back. The visit lasted 34 minutes. That night, I called Valentina, the one person in Travis's family I actually trusted, and she told me Vernon had already been making calls all week. He had invited over 30 family members to his house for something he was calling a blessing ceremony. He had told every one of them that Travis had already agreed. Travis had not agreed. He had not even been told. Vernon had rented chairs, ordered food, called his church friends and cousins and sisters, and told everyone he was going to officially give the baby his family name in front of a crowd. When Travis called Vernon and said nobody had asked him about any of this, Vernon said he did not think he needed permission to welcome his own grandson into his family. When Travis said they were not coming, Vernon said then, "I will tell everyone you chose her over your own blood." Again, Travis hung up. We did not go to the ceremony. Instead, I sent a message to the family group text laying it out plainly. Vernon had organized this without our knowledge or permission. He had told people Travis agreed when Travis had not even heard about it, and we would not be there. Some family members replied saying they had no idea Vernon had lied. Others called me disrespectful. Nina called Travis and told him he had humiliated his father in front of the whole family. Travis told her Vernon had humiliated himself when he lied about Travis agreeing. After that, Vernon went completely silent. No calls, no texts. 3 days of nothing. And the silence put me more on edge than the yelling ever had. It felt like pressure building up somewhere I could not see. Then on the 4th morning, the doorbell rang at 7:15. I was feeding Miguel on the couch. Travis was in the shower. I looked through the peephole and my whole body went tight. It was Vernon. Nina was standing behind him. They were both dressed like they were coming from church, and Vernon was holding a Bible. I did not open the door. I went down the hall and knocked hard on the bathroom door. The water cut off fast. Travis came out half-dressed, still wet, took one look at my face and went straight to the front of the house. He looked through the peephole and then opened the door, standing in the frame without stepping aside. He told his father he could not just show up like this. Vernon held the Bible up at chest level and said he was not there to fight. He had canceled the ceremony like Travis asked. He just wanted to pray over the baby in his own home. His voice was calm and practiced, every word placed. Nina leaned around his shoulder and told Travis their father had been crying every night and just wanted 5 minutes with the baby. I was standing a few feet behind Travis, and I could see the shift in his posture, the small drop in his shoulders. The guilt was landing. Travis turned to look at me. His eyes were asking. I shook my head slow and clear. No. Vernon saw it. His face changed and he said, "See, she will not even let me pray. What kind of woman keeps a grandfather from blessing his own grandchild?" He said it loud enough for the neighbors to hear. He was making me the villain on my own porch. I stepped forward behind Travis so Vernon could see me and said, "Vernon, you held my son and would not give him back. You made a blanket with a fake name. You called my doctor's office and lied about who you were. You do not get to stand on my porch and play victim." Vernon's face shifted in a way I was not expecting. The mask slipped for just a second, and what was underneath did not look like anger. It looked like something real had been hit. His voice cracked when he spoke and he said, "I just want to hold him one more time, please." Then he started to cry. His whole face crumbled. His hands shook. The Bible trembled in his grip. He looked past me to Travis and said, "I held you the day you were born, and I swore I would be there for every generation. I know I pushed too hard, but do not take my family from me." Travis looked gutted. He took one step toward his father. I could feel everything we had built starting to shift. I said, "Vernon, look at me." He did. His eyes were wet and red. I said, "Tell me what you are sorry for. Say the specific thing." His eyes blinked. Tears still ran down his face and he said, "I just told you. I pushed too hard." I said, "You called my doctor's office and lied about who you were. Are you sorry for that?" Silence. I said, "You tried to open my door while I was in labor. Are you sorry for that?" Nothing. His mouth had gone to a thin line. I said, "You held my baby and would not give him back when I asked. Are you sorry for that?" Vernon's jaw tightened. Whatever had cracked open in him sealed right back. He looked at me with wet eyes and said, "I am his grandfather." 3 words. That was his answer to all of it. Not "I was wrong." Not "I am sorry." Just "I am his grandfather." Like the title covered everything he had done. I said, "That is not an answer." I looked at Travis. He was standing in the doorway halfway between me and his father, and I could see the war in his face. But I needed him here. I said, close the door. Travis looked at his father. Vernon stood on the porch with tears drying on his face and a Bible in his shaking hand, and he looked old. He looked like a man watching something final happen. Travis looked at him for a long moment. Then he stepped back inside and closed the door. I used the days that followed to prepare. I pulled together every incident, every date I could recall, every documented thing Vernon had done, and wrote it into a letter. Not emotional, not angry, a factual record. I was going to read it to Vernon face to face, with Travis beside me, and with one specific person in the room. Valentina told me Vernon's mother was visiting from out of state and staying at his house that week. Travis's grandmother was the one person in that family Vernon could not dismiss or deflect. That was where we were going. The following Saturday, we drove to Vernon's house with Miguel in the car seat and the letter in my bag. When we stepped inside, I saw the arrangement immediately. Vernon in the big chair by the window, the one he always uses like a throne. Nina on the couch. Jorge leaning against the wall near the back hallway, arms crossed. And in the armchair across from Vernon, the one with the green cushion nobody was usually permitted to sit in, was Travis's grandmother, small and still, hands folded in her lap, watching the door. Vernon stood the moment he saw us and immediately reached toward Miguel. I said, sit down, Vernon. We are here to talk. He turned that look on me, the one that says, who do you think you are? Then he looked at his mother. She looked right back at him from that chair and said, sit down, Vernon. Let her speak. He sat without a word. I pulled out the letter and started reading, out loud, in the middle of Vernon's living room, with his mother and his sister and his son all watching. I started with the call to my doctor's office, the date, what Vernon told the receptionist, that the office called me to verify because something felt wrong. I read about the hospital, Vernon arriving before we called anyone, the argument at the front desk, standing outside my door, trying the handle while I was in labor, sending Nina to pressure Travis while my blood pressure climbed, getting walked off the floor by security while he was still yelling about his rights. I read about the visit at our house, the blanket, little V, holding Miguel and refusing to hand him back when I asked. I read about the ceremony he organized without us, the 30+ people he invited, the chairs he rented, the lie he told about Travis already agreeing. I read all of it, every incident, every date. I did not raise my voice. I did not speed up or slow down. The room was completely silent except for Miguel making soft sounds against my shoulder. When Nina opened her mouth partway through, Travis's grandmother raised one hand, palm out, and said, I said, let her speak. Nina looked down and did not say another word. When I finished, I folded the letter, set it on the coffee table in front of Vernon, and looked at him. His face was red in the way that comes from holding everything in for too long and your body starts to show it. I said, Vernon, you have not apologized for a single one of these things. Not once. You have cried, you have yelled, you have guilted, you have lied, but you have never said you were wrong. I let that sit. Then I said, I am not keeping your grandson from you. You are keeping yourself from your grandson. Every time you push, you lose more time with him. That is not my choice. That is yours. Vernon looked at his mother instead of me. She looked back at him from the green chair with her hands still folded and said, she is right, Vernon. I raised you better than this. Something in Vernon broke right then, and it was nothing like the performance on the porch. This was the kind of breaking that happens when you scan the room and realize there is no one left in your corner. Jorge had turned his face to the floor. Nina was looking at her sleeve. His mother was watching him without moving or softening. Vernon said in a low, flat voice, you are all turning on me. Travis spoke for the first time since we had walked in. He said, nobody is turning on you, Dad. We are asking you to stop. Vernon stood up. His voice came up with him, not a yell but close, and he said he had given everything to this family for decades and was now being told he could not see his own grandson because he wanted to be there for him. I said, you were not there for him. You were there for yourself. Every single thing you did was about what you wanted, not what Miguel needed, not what I needed, not what Travis needed. Travis's grandmother said, Vernon, sit down and listen to your daughter-in-law or leave your own house. Those are your options. He breathed through his nose for a few seconds. Then he sat back down. I slid the letter across the table to him and read him the terms. No unannounced visits. No contact with my doctor or any medical provider. No discussing Miguel's name, my parenting, or my marriage with anyone in this family. You want to see Miguel? You ask me, not Travis. Me. You come when I say, and you leave when I say. If you cannot do that, you do not see him. Vernon picked up the letter and read it. His hands were shaking so badly the paper trembled the whole time. His eyes moved down the page and at one point he stopped, stared at a line, and set his jaw. He kept reading. When he finished, he looked up, not at me but at Travis, and said, and you agree with this? Travis did not hesitate. He did not look at me for permission or soften his voice. He said, I wrote half of it. Vernon put the letter down. Nobody spoke. The room held still. Then Vernon looked at me, not at Travis, not at his mother, and his voice came out quieter than I had ever heard it. He said, I want to see my grandson. I said, then this is how it works now. I walked across the room and placed Miguel in Vernon's arms. Then I walked back and sat down next to Travis. Vernon held the baby and did not say a word.